Wounded human soldier carries alien child through war zone. Mother offers sacred life debt bond. The impact of the plasma round threw Jake Peters against the tree trunk with bone-crushing force. White-hot pain lanced through his side as he slid to the ground, the charred edges of his armor still smoking. Gunfire and explosions echoed through the dense forest of Althea, now fading as the ambush pushed his unit farther away. "Diaz! Rodriguez, copy!" Jake barked into his comms, met only with static. Blood seeped between his fingers as he pressed against the wound below his ribs. The tactical display inside his helmet flickered, then died completely. Jake forced himself to move, each step sending waves of agony through his body. The mission brief had claimed this was a standard peacekeeping patrol, nothing standard about a calculated ambush with heavy artillery. Rain began to fall, hissing against the superheated sections of his armor. Jake stumbled forward, combat instincts guiding him toward higher ground. After 20 minutes of painful progress, he spotted a narrow opening in the rock face ahead, a cave entrance partially hidden by the planet's strange phosphorescent vegetation. The cave was deeper than it appeared from outside, tunneling back into darkness. Jake activated his emergency light and swept the beam across the interior. His blood ran cold. A pair of reflective eyes stared back at him from the shadows. Jake's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm. The eyes blinked, followed by a soft whimper. Not a predator, a child, a Serenian child. She couldn't have been more than a toddler by human standards, with delicate fox-like features and light blue fur. Her ears, nearly as long as her head, pressed flat in fear. A darker stain matted the fur of her left leg. "Hey there," Jake whispered, holstering his weapon and raising his palms. His translator was offline with the rest of his systems, leaving him with only the handful of Serenian phrases from his cultural briefing. "No harm, safe." The child scrambled back against the cave wall, limping heavily. Jake recognized the universal body language of a trapped, wounded animal. "I'm a medic," Jake said, tapping the Red Cross insignia on his shoulder plate. He slowly removed his medical kit from his belt, movements deliberate and non-threatening. "I can help." Pain flared in his side as he knelt, reminding him of his own predicament. Basic field medicine first. He injected a combat stimulant and antibiotic cocktail, then applied a pressure seal to his wound. It would buy him time, nothing more. The child watched his every move, curiosity gradually replacing fear. When Jake extended an antiseptic wipe toward her injured leg, she flinched but didn't retreat further. "Brave kid," Jake murmured, gently cleaning the wound, a deep laceration but not life-threatening. The little girl's eyes widened at the cooling sensation of the medical gel he applied next. Jake's translator suddenly sputtered to life, catching fragments of distant Serenian communications. Military bands, search patterns. They were looking for someone. The child's ears perked up at the sounds. "Mama," she said, the word universal enough that Jake understood. "Your mother's looking for you?" Jake asked, securing a bandage around her small leg. Lightning forked across the sky outside, followed by thunderous artillery. Both human and Serenian forces were still engaged, with the cave located squarely between their lines. The tactical situation clarified in Jake's mind. This child was lost in an active combat zone, separated from her people. Every minute increased the chance of her being killed in the crossfire or by the planet's predators. Jake checked his wound. The seal was holding, but the pain was intensifying. He had maybe a day before infection set in beyond what his combat stims could manage. "Looks like we're both in trouble, kid," Jake said. He removed his damaged tactical vest and fashioned a makeshift carrier from it. "How about we find your people together?" The child tilted her head, not understanding his words, but seeming to grasp his intention. Jake winced as he carefully lifted her into the carrier. "My name's Jake," he said, pointing to himself. The child merely blinked, too young to speak. A small identification band around her tiny wrist caught Jake's attention. He squinted at the Serenian glyphs, illuminated by his light, making out what must be her name, Lylan. "I'll get you home, Lylan," Jake said, securing her against his less damaged side. "Your mother must be worried sick." As they emerged from the cave into the alien twilight, Jake knew he was making a decision that violated protocol and possibly crossed into treason. A human soldier aiding a Serenian, even a child, would be viewed as betrayal by hardliners on both sides. But as the small weight settled against him, Jake felt something he hadn't experienced since before the war: certainty. Whatever came next, he was doing the right thing. The forest of Althea came alive with the first light of dawn. Bioluminescent flora dimmed as twin suns crested the horizon, casting the landscape in a surreal amber glow. Jake had traveled through the night, stopping only when necessary to rest his aching body and check on Lylan. The small Serenian child had remained surprisingly quiet, occasionally whimpering when Jake's movements jostled her injured leg. Her oversized eyes studied everything, from the strange human carrying her to the familiar wilderness around them. Jake paused at the edge of a clearing, using a fallen log for support as he lowered himself to check his wound. The pressure seal had darkened ominously, his body heat and exertion accelerating the spread of infection beneath it. "Not good," he muttered, injecting another dose of antibiotics from his rapidly depleting supply. He broke open an emergency ration pack, the hermetically sealed protein bar, tasteless but necessary. Lylan's nose twitched at the scent, her small stomach growled audibly. "Hungry, huh?" Jake broke off a tiny piece, hesitating. "I have no idea if this will poison you." Lylan's tiny clawed hand reached for the food with unmistakable intent. Jake pulled back the morsel. "Hold on, let me think this through." His field manual offered little guidance on Serenian dietary needs. What he did remember was their carnivorous tendencies and protein requirements. The emergency ration was synth protein, designed to be hypoallergenic. It might work. "Here," he said, offering the smallest crumb. "Let's see if this agrees with you." Lylan snatched it eagerly, stuffing it into her mouth. Jake watched anxiously for several minutes, relaxing only when no adverse reaction occurred. He broke off a larger piece, which disappeared just as quickly. As he prepared to move on, a distinct electronic whine echoed from the north. Dropships. Jake activated his tactical visor's remaining functions, the damaged display showing intermittent heat signatures in the distance. "Patrol," he whispered, slipping deeper into the underbrush. The makeshift carrier kept Lylan secured against his chest, her small form now hidden beneath a layer of camouflage fabric torn from his gear. They moved parallel to a stream, using the water's sound to mask their footsteps. Jake's training kicked in. Stick to natural pathways, avoid broken foliage, minimize trail signs. The extra weight of the child strained his injured body, but her warmth against him provided strange comfort. Midday brought them to a steep embankment overlooking a valley. Jake surveyed the terrain, identifying the telltale signs of a Serenian settlement approximately 10 kilometers east. A day's journey in his condition, maybe 2. Lylan suddenly stiffened in the carrier, her ears swiveling backward. Jake froze. Seconds later, he heard it too. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving quickly through the forest behind them. With no time to retreat, Jake pressed himself against the base of a massive tree, its phosphorescent roots providing minimal cover. He drew his sidearm, powering it to standby. 3 Serenian scouts passed less than 20 meters away, their sleek armor adorned with tribal markings different from those he'd encountered in battle. Hunters rather than soldiers. They paused, conferring in low tones, their fox-like ears twitching as they scanned the area. Jake held his breath, one hand gently covering Lylan's mouth. The child seemed to understand the need for silence, remaining perfectly still against him. One scout approached their position, nostrils flaring. Jake's finger tensed on the trigger, the weight of the choice before him crushing down. If he fired, he'd reveal their position to every patrol in the area. If he didn't... The scout stopped, ears perked toward a sound in the distance. After a tense moment, he rejoined his companions, and the patrol moved away to investigate whatever had caught their attention. Jake released his breath, holstering his weapon with shaking hands. Lylan looked up at him, her large eyes somehow conveying understanding beyond her years. "That was close," Jake whispered, checking her bandaged leg. The wound was healing well, better than his own. As daylight faded, Jake located a sheltered overhang formed by fallen trees. He gathered what medicinal plants he recognized from his survival training, creating a poultice for his worsening wound. Lylan watched intently, then suddenly squirmed from the carrier. Before Jake could stop her, she crawled a short distance and pawed at a cluster of small blue fungi. "No, don't eat those," Jake started, reaching for her. Lylan ignored him, gathering several pieces and crawling back, depositing them at his feet. She pushed them toward his wound with surprising determination. Jake studied the fungi, recognition dawning. They matched the description of a native Althian species used by the native population for its antibacterial properties. "You're something else, kid," Jake said, carefully incorporating the fungi into his poultice. The relief was almost immediate as he applied it, the burning sensation in his side diminishing slightly. Under the alien stars, man and child shared an unspoken understanding. Jake reconfigured the carrier into a small shelter, carefully placing Lylan inside where she promptly curled into a ball, her breathing soft and even. Jake leaned back, eyes fixed on the unfamiliar constellations. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, they had survived their first day together. Jake jerked awake to the sound of distant engines. Dawn had barely broken, the forest still shrouded in misty half-light. Lylan was already awake, her oversized ears swiveling toward the noise, tiny body trembling. "Multiple search parties," Jake murmured, quickly gathering their meager supplies. His medical scanner picked up electromagnetic signatures from both directions, human forces to the west, Serenian to the east, both converging on their position. He checked his wound. The fungal poultice had helped, but infection continued its slow spread. The burning sensation had transformed into a disturbing numbness that radiated from the injury site. Not a good sign. "Time to move, little one." Jake secured Lylan in the carrier, noticing her leg had almost completely healed. Serenian physiology apparently recovered faster than human. At least one of them was improving. They moved south, away from both search patterns, traversing increasingly difficult terrain. The forest gave way to a rocky escarpment, riddled with narrow ravines. Perfect for staying hidden, treacherous for maintaining speed. By midday, Jake's strength was failing. Each step required more concentration than the last. Sweat drenched his body, despite the cool air, fever taking hold. He paused to rest against a boulder, breathing heavily. Lylan chirped softly, patting his cheek with her small hand. Her eyes, brilliant azure and disconcertingly intelligent, studied his face with concern. "I'm okay," Jake lied, forcing himself upright. "Just catching my breath." A distant howl froze them both. Not mechanical, not human or Serenian, something native. Jake recalled the briefing on Althian wildlife. The planet's apex predator, the rakvors, hunted in the highland regions, quadrupedal carnivores with remarkable speed and natural stealth capabilities. The colonists called them ghost cats. Another howl, closer this time, hunting pack. Jake quickened his pace, ignoring the protest from his body. They needed elevation and defensibility. His eyes scanned the landscape, locking onto a cluster of needle-like rock formations ahead. The first rakvor appeared as they reached the formation's edge, sleek, obsidian-scaled, with multiple eyes arranged in an unsettling asymmetric pattern. It moved with liquid grace, testing the air with a forked tongue. Jake drew his sidearm, the weight unexpectedly heavy in his fever-weakened grip. The plasma charge indicator showed barely enough power for 3 shots. He'd have to make them count. The creature stalked forward, joined by 2 more emerging from different angles. Classic pack hunting strategy. "Hold tight," Jake whispered to Lylan, who burrowed deeper against his chest. The lead rakvor lunged without warning, covering 20 meters in a heartbeat. Jake fired. The plasma burst, catching it mid-leap, sending it crashing into the rocks. The second shot went wide as he staggered backward. The remaining predators circled more cautiously, communicating through low, clicking sounds. Jake retreated toward a narrow crevice in the rock face, his back to the stone. 1 shot left. 2 predators. Impossible odds. The rakvors charged simultaneously. Jake aimed at the closest one, finger tightening on the trigger. A blinding flash of blue energy streaked past him, striking the creature with devastating force. The second rakvor leapt toward Jake's exposed side. He pivoted, using his body to shield Lylan, bracing for the impact. Instead, another energy blast caught the predator mid-air, its body convulsing before dropping lifeless mere feet away. Jake spun around, weapon raised toward this new threat. A Serenian female stood atop the rock formation, energy rifle still raised, steam rising from its barrel. Her armor bore the insignia of a scout commander, electric blue fur visible beneath her helmet. Their eyes locked across the distance. The Serenian lowered her weapon slightly, head tilting as she noticed the small bundle secured against Jake's chest. The moment shattered as more howls echoed through the ravine. The Serenian commander gestured sharply toward a path leading upward, then disappeared over the ridge. Jake hesitated only briefly before following. Enemy or not, she'd saved their lives. More importantly, she'd seen Lylan and hadn't immediately fired upon them. That meant something. The path wound treacherously upward. Jake's weakened state made each step a battle of will. Twice he nearly fell, catching himself at the last moment. Lylan remained perfectly still, instinctively minimizing any additional strain. At the summit, Jake found himself facing not one, but 5 Serenian scouts, weapons trained on him. Their commander stood at the center, her rifle lowered but ready. Jake slowly raised one hand, the other still supporting Lylan. "I found her abandoned," he said, though his translator was likely still malfunctioning. "I'm trying to return her to her people." The commander's eyes narrowed, her gaze fixed not on Jake but on the small child he carried. Lylan suddenly stirred, her tiny face emerging from the improvised carrier. She blinked at the Serenians, then made a soft trilling sound. The commander's stoic expression cracked, her sharp features softening with unmistakable recognition. "Lylan." The commander's voice was barely audible, her composure slipping for just an instant before the steel returned to her spine. Jake assessed his situation with clinical detachment. 5 armed Serenians versus 1 wounded human with a depleted sidearm and a child to protect. Not favorable odds. "Lower your weapon, human," the commander ordered, her translator functioning better than his own. "Slowly." Jake complied, placing his sidearm on the rocky ground. "The child needs medical attention," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Her leg was injured." The commander approached with predatory grace, each step measured and cautious. Up close, the resemblance between her and Lylan was unmistakable. The same electric blue fur, though the commander's was richer in color and marked with distinctive black streaks. Her eyes, sharp as cut sapphires, assessed Jake with calculating precision. "You will surrender the child," she said, reaching for Lylan. Something fiercely protective flared in Jake's chest. "Your name first." The commander's ears flattened against her skull. "You are in no position to make demands." "Not a demand, courtesy." Jake held her gaze. "I've carried her for 2 days. I'd like to know who I'm giving her to." A tense silence stretched between them. The other scouts maintained their aim, fingers hovering near triggers. "Leolith," she finally responded. "Commander Leolith." Lylan chirped excitedly at the familiar voice, tiny hands reaching toward the commander. The pieces clicked into place in Jake's fever-addled mind. "She's yours," he said, "not a question." Leolith's expression remained unreadable. "She's Serenian." Jake carefully loosened the carrier, his movements deliberately slow. "She's been very brave." As he transferred Lylan into Leolith's waiting arms, the world tilted sideways. The last of Jake's strength evaporated, his knees buckling beneath him. The rocky ground rushed up to meet him, but unconsciousness claimed him first. Fragments of sensation penetrated the darkness, the hum of engines, voices arguing in Serenian, the distinctive smell of medical antiseptic, heat, unbearable heat consuming him from within. Jake opened his eyes to a ceiling of interlocking hexagonal panels, illuminated by a soft blue glow. He lay on a medical table, restraints securing his wrists and ankles. His combat suit had been removed, leaving him in his base layer. A Serenian medical device hummed as it hovered over his wounded side. "The infection has penetrated his bloodstream," a voice stated clinically. "Human physiology is responding poorly to our standard treatments." "Try again," came the unmistakable command of Leolith. Jake turned his head to locate her. She stood at the entrance to the medical bay, her military posture rigid. Lylan was no longer with her. "Commander," Jake croaked, his throat painfully dry. "The child?" Leolith approached, tension evident in every line of her body. "My daughter is recovering well. Your field treatment prevented permanent damage." Relief washed through Jake. "Good." "Why?" The question was abrupt, her blue eyes boring into his. "You're a human soldier, our enemy. Why risk your life for a Serenian child?" Jake considered lying, crafting some tale of strategic advantage. In his delirious state, honesty seemed simpler. She was alone, scared, hurt. He swallowed painfully. It was the right thing to do. "The right thing," Lilith repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar concept. "You expect me to believe human morality extends to Serenian children?" "Not human morality, just mine." Lilith studied him with newfound intensity. "Your military will consider this treason." "Probably," Jake agreed, the fever making him lightheaded. "Worth it." A tremor ran through his body, the infection asserting itself despite the medical intervention. Jake closed his eyes against a wave of nausea. "Your condition is deteriorating," Lilith stated, a strange edge to her voice. "Our medications are incompatible with your physiology." "My field kit," Jake managed, "contains human antibiotics." Lilith gestured to a subordinate, who retrieved Jake's equipment from across the room. They administered the remaining doses under Jake's mumbled instructions. "It won't be enough," Jake admitted. "Need a proper medical facility." "The nearest human outpost is across active battle lines," Lilith informed him. "Then I guess I've had my last mission." Jake tried to smile, but his facial muscles wouldn't cooperate. Lilith's communicator chimed. She answered with sharp, clipped Serenian phrases, her expression darkening with each exchange. When she disconnected, her gaze returned to Jake with renewed suspicion. "Your unit has been reported operating deep in our territory," she said. "Not standard peacekeeping movements. What is their mission?" Jake's thoughts swam hazily. Colonel Harmon's classified briefing resurfaced in fragmented pieces. Intelligence gathering, suspected third-party manipulation, evidence of weapon transfers that matched neither human nor Serenian technology. "Not what you think," he managed. "Something else. Happening." Lilith leaned closer, her scent, wild and unfamiliar yet strangely appealing, filling his senses. "What do you know, soldier?" she demanded. Jake's vision blurred at the edges. The last thing he saw before darkness reclaimed him was the unexpected concern in Commander Lilith's brilliant blue eyes. Jake awoke to small hands patting his face. His fever had broken, leaving him weak but lucid. Lilan sat beside him on the medical bed, her tiny claws gently prodding his cheek with innocent curiosity. The restraints that had secured his wrists were gone. "Hey there," Jake murmured, voice rough from disuse. "Shouldn't you be with your mother?" "She is quite determined." Lilith's voice came from the doorway. She wore lighter armor now, her commander's insignia still prominent. "She refused to leave your side after you stabilized." Jake carefully sat up, muscles protesting. "How long was I out?" 38 hours. Lilith approached, her movements precise and controlled. "Your combat stimulants nearly killed you. The human antibiotics merely slowed the infection." "What saved me then?" Lilith's ears twitched slightly. "Serenian blood filtration. Experimental. The medical team was reluctant to attempt it on a human." "You ordered them to try anyway?" "I did." Her gaze was unreadable. "Your life for my daughters seemed a fair exchange." Lilan chirped happily, climbing onto Jake's lap with casual familiarity. Her injured leg showed no signs of the previous trauma. "Where am I exactly?" Jake asked, noting the room's curved architecture and unusual materials. "Forward command post. Sector 7. Lilith observed his reaction carefully. "Well within Serenian territory." Jake processed this information. "Your superiors know I'm here?" "Some, not all." Her lips tightened. "Your presence is—" A low-pitched alarm suddenly pulsed through the facility. Lilith's posture shifted instantly to combat readiness, ears swiveling toward the sound. "Stay here," she commanded, sweeping Lilan into her arms and depositing her in a secured corner alcove. "Both of you." The door had barely closed behind her when an explosion rocked the structure. Dust cascaded from the ceiling as emergency lights activated. Jake's military training took over. He located his gear stacked in a nearby storage unit, quickly donning the cleaned but still damaged armor. His weapons were missing, but his tactical systems had been recharged, now functioning at partial capacity. A second explosion, closer this time. The facility's alarm changed pitch. Jake knelt beside Lilan. "I need to help your mother," he explained, though she couldn't understand his words. Stay hidden. The small Serenian child blinked up at him, then deliberately crawled deeper into the alcove, demonstrating more situational awareness than many human children 3 times her age. The corridor outside was chaos, Serenian personnel rushing to defensive positions, smoke billowing from a breached section ahead. Jake's translator picked up fragments. Unknown attackers, heavy weaponry, security perimeter compromised. Jake moved against the flow of traffic toward the breach. He rounded a corner to find Lilith and 2 guards pinned down by concentrated fire from the damaged entrance. The attackers were neither human nor Serenian. 3 bipedal figures advanced through the smoke, their bodies encased in articulated exoskeletons. Geometric patterns covered their armor, which seemed to absorb energy weapons rather than deflect them. Their faces were hidden behind featureless masks, with 3 horizontal slits where eyes should be. Vakari, Leolith hissed, ducking another volley of fire. How did they find us? Jake slid into cover beside her. You know them? Arms dealers. They've sold weapons to both sides since the conflict began. Her eyes narrowed. What are you doing here? I ordered you to stay with Lylan. I have combat training. She needs protection. Jake nodded toward the attackers. Those aren't standard mercenary tactics. That's a capture formation. Lilith's expression shifted from anger to grim understanding. She passed him a sidearm. Can you still shoot? Well enough. Jake checked the unfamiliar weapon. What's their objective? Unknown. Lilith fired twice, forcing the Vakari to pause their advance. We're a communication outpost, not a strategic target. Jake's tactical display flickered, intercepting a fragmented transmission. Alien symbols scrolled across his visor before his translation matrix decoded key phrases. Human specimen, Serenian hybrid, research opportunity, primary target acquired. Cold understanding dawned. They're after Lylan. Lilith's head snapped toward him. What? My unit's mission, Jake said urgently. We weren't just peacekeeping. Intelligence suspected a third party was manipulating the conflict, prolonging the war. We were gathering evidence. The pieces aligned with terrible clarity. His unit's classified mission, the unusual patrol pattern that separated him from his squad, the convenient ambush that left him wounded but alive. They were tracking me, Jake realized, using me to find her. They knew I'd try to return her to Serenian territory. Lilith's expression hardened. Why target my daughter? She's unique. Half Serenian, half human, isn't she? The revelation emerged from subconscious observations. Subtle physical differences, her unusual resilience, the genetic compatibility that allowed Jake to share food with her. The first successful hybrid between our species. Shock registered briefly on Lilith's face before a nearby explosion demanded their attention. The Vakari were advancing again, systematically eliminating resistance. We can discuss your disturbing conclusions later, she growled, checking her weapon charge. If we survive. A Vakari grenade arced toward their position. Jake lunged forward, catching it mid-air and hurling it back toward the attackers. The resulting explosion created momentary confusion. Command center, Leolith said, already moving. We need to activate the facility's defense protocols. They fought their way through the corridors, Jake covering their flank as Leolith led. Despite his weakened state, combat instincts carried him forward, each shot precisely placed. At the command center entrance, a Vakari soldier appeared suddenly from a side passage, weapon aimed at Leolith's exposed back. Jake threw himself forward without hesitation, taking the full impact of the energy blast across his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body as he collapsed against her. You fool, Leolith hissed, dragging Jake behind the reinforced door of the command center. Blood seeped through his armor where the Vakari weapon had struck. Why would you do that? Jake winced as she sealed the door, security protocols engaging with a series of mechanical clicks. Instinct, he managed through gritted teeth. Lilith activated the command console, her fingers flying across the alien interface. Defense systems hummed to life throughout the facility. She turned back to Jake, eyes narrowing at his wound. Remove the armor, she ordered, retrieving a medical kit from a wall compartment. Jake complied with difficulty, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through his shoulder. The wound was ugly, charred flesh surrounding a deep energy burn that had melted through the protective plating. Lilith knelt beside him, her touch unexpectedly gentle as she examined the injury. "The second time you've been wounded protecting something of mine." "Keeping score?" Jake attempted humor to distract from the pain. "Serenians always do." Her eyes met his, something unreadable flickering within their sapphire depths. "We remember debts." She applied a translucent gel to the wound. The burning sensation immediately diminished, replaced by cool numbness. Jake's eyes widened in surprise. "Nerve inhibitor," Leolith explained. "It will prevent pain while the tissue regenerates." "Thanks." Jake tested his arm, finding the mobility already improved. "About what I said before the attack." "Lylan's parentage is not your concern," Lilith cut him off sharply, her ears flattening. "If the Vakari are targeting her specifically, it is." Jake held her gaze. "I need to understand what I'm fighting for." Tension crackled between them. The distant sounds of combat echoed through the structure as the facility's automated defenses engaged the invaders. Lilith's composure cracked slightly. Her father was a human diplomatic envoy before the war. Her voice carried complex emotions: anger, loss, perhaps regret. When the conflict began, he was recalled to Earth. He didn't know about Lylan. And the Vakari somehow learned about her existence, Jake concluded, a living symbol of what they're trying to prevent: peace between our species. Lilith finished dressing his wound in silence. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Hybrid births between our species have a success rate of less than 1%. Lylan is unprecedented." "She's perfect," Jake said simply. Something softened in Lilith's expression. "Yes." The moment stretched between them, interrupted by the facility's communication system crackling to life. A gruff, Serenian voice demanded status updates, security protocols, prisoner verification. "Your superiors?" Jake asked. Lilith's expression hardened. "High Command, they've detected the attack." She hesitated, glancing at Jake. "If they learn you're here—" "I'm an enemy combatant," Jake finished for her. "War prisoner at best, execution at worst." She nodded tersely. Jake weighed his options. "Where's Lylan now?" "Secure chamber, 3 levels below us. It's where we shelter our young during attacks." Lilith's gaze dropped to the weapon she'd given him, still clutched in his hand. "You could use this opportunity to escape. The northern exit will be minimally guarded during the attack." Jake placed the weapon on the console between them. "Not what I had in mind." Lilith tilted her head, studying him with renewed intensity. "What did you have in mind, human?" "Jake," he corrected. "And I was thinking we should get your daughter, access my unit's intelligence data, and figure out how deep this Vakari manipulation goes." "Your unit's data is not accessible from a Serenian facility." Jake tapped his damaged tactical visor. "Encrypted local copy, standard protocol for deep reconnaissance." He grimaced. "Getting it decrypted without my authentication codes will be the challenge." "You would share classified human intelligence with a Serenian commander?" Leolith's disbelief was evident. "That is treason by any definition." "If I'm right about the Vakari, both our species are being played against each other." Jake stood, testing his newly bandaged shoulder. "Seems a reasonable price to pay for the truth." Lilith maintained her skeptical expression, but Jake noticed her ears had relaxed slightly from their defensive position. Progress. The communication system chirped insistently. "You need to answer that," Jake said. "Tell them whatever you need to. I'll follow your lead." Lilith's hand paused over the response button. "The Vakari will have reinforcements. We cannot stay here." "Then we get Lylan and move to a secure location." Jake reached for his damaged armor. "Your call, Commander." Their eyes locked, measuring trust against caution, duty against instinct. Finally, Leolith activated the communication link. "Command center secure," she reported crisply. "Minimal casualties. Attackers identified as Vakari mercenaries." A pause. "Sensitive research materials have been compromised, implementing protocol Shadowfall." The voice on the other end responded with obvious surprise. Leolith cut the transmission before questions could follow. "Protocol Shadowfall?" Jake asked. "Deep cover contingency. It gives me 12 hours before check-in is required." Lilith was already moving toward a concealed exit panel. Time enough to either prove your theory or put a blade through your heart. Jake smiled despite himself. Has anyone ever told you that you have a way with words, Commander? For the first time, Lilith's lips curved into something resembling a smile. Move, human, my daughter is waiting. The maintenance tunnels beneath the Serenian facility twisted like arteries, illuminated by strips of bioluminescent flora cultivated specifically for this purpose. Jake followed Lilith through the labyrinth, impressed by how silently she moved despite her armor. They reached the secure chamber without incident. Inside, several Serenian children huddled under the watchful eye of an elderly caretaker. Lilith spotted them immediately, breaking from the group and rushing toward Lilith with surprising speed for her tiny legs. Lilith scooped her daughter up, whispering something in her native tongue that the translator didn't catch. The embrace lasted only moments before her commander's discipline reasserted itself. We take the Eastern Passage, she informed Jake, already moving. It leads to a concealed hangar. Your people won't stop us, Jake asked, noting the suspicious glare from the elderly caretaker. They will not question Protocol Shadowfall. Lilith's tone suggested the consequences for doing so would be severe. The hangar contained 3 small craft, shaped like elongated teardrops with swept-back fins. Lilith selected the smallest, its hull adorned with minimal markings. Scout vessel, she explained, activating the entry ramp. Fast, lightly armed, minimal tracking signature. Once aboard, Jake marveled at the organic feel of Serenian technology. The controls seemed grown rather than manufactured, responding to Lilith's touch with fluid precision. Within minutes, they were airborne, slipping through a camouflaged exit into Althea's turbulent atmosphere. Where are we heading? Jake asked, settling into the secondary position with Lilith secured in a specialized harness between them. Neutral territory, the Vakan Ridges. Lilith's fingers danced across the control interface. Remote enough to avoid detection, close enough to access communication networks. Jake activated his tactical visor, wincing as damaged circuits sparked against his skin. Let's see what we've got. The data retrieval was painfully slow, fragments of intelligence reports reconstructing bit by bit. Lilith maintained their flight path, occasionally glancing at his progress. The Vrakari are an old species, Jake explained as information appeared. Technological brokers. They supply weapons to over 30 conflicts across 7 systems. War profiteers are hardly unusual, Lilith noted. This goes deeper. Jake expanded a file showing trade routes and resource extraction permits. They've been manipulating both sides for years. Look at these shipping manifests. They've been delivering identical weapon systems to both human and Serenian forces, then providing intelligence on how to counter them. Lilith's ears flattened against her skull, ensuring the conflict remains perfectly balanced. Perpetual war, perpetual profit. Jake pulled up another file, geological surveys of Althea. But that's not all they want. The initial fighting centered around disputed mining regions, but look at these subterranean scans. The display showed deep honeycomb-like structures beneath Althea's crust. Lilith leaned closer, her scent, something like cinnamon and ozone, momentarily distracting Jake. Those aren't natural formations. No, they're not. They're ancient technology, buried for millennia. Jake expanded the image, and the Vrakari want exclusive access. What does this have to do with Lilith? Lilith asked, her protective gaze falling to her daughter, who played contentedly with a small puzzle cube. Jake hesitated. I'm not certain, but these files mention genetic compatibility as a key to accessing the buried systems. Something about harmonized biological signatures. The implications hung between them. If the ancient technology required genetic keys, a human-Serenian hybrid would represent a unique key neither side could produce without cooperation. Their craft suddenly lurched, warning systems flaring to life. Lilith cursed in her native tongue. Pursuit craft, she announced, banking hard to starboard. 3 signatures, Vrakari design. Jake secured his harness. They tracked us. Impossible. Lilith engaged evasive maneuvers, the small vessel diving into a canyon system. This craft has the highest grade stealth systems. The answer hit Jake with sudden clarity. It's me. My tactical systems, They must have compromised them during the ambush. Understanding dawned in Leolith's eyes, quickly replaced by fury. Your equipment brought them to my daughter. Twice. No time for that now, Jake responded, reaching for the weapons console. Can these cannons penetrate Vrakari shields? Leolith's professional instincts overcame her anger. Not directly. We'll need to be creative. The pursuing craft closed rapidly, their superior engines easily matching the scout vessel's speed. Energy weapons lanced past them, superheating the air. Leolith piloted with remarkable skill, using the canyon walls for cover while maintaining their heading toward the distant ridges. Jake targeted the occasional counterfire, forcing their pursuers to break formation. There, Leolith indicated a narrow fissure in the approaching cliff face. Too tight for their larger vessels. Too tight for ours, too, Jake observed. Leolith's lips curled into a predatory smile. Watch! She activated a sequence of commands. The scout vessel shuddered, then physically reconfigured, its wings folding closer to the fuselage. They shot through the opening with meters to spare, emerging into a vast cavern system illuminated by the same bioluminescent flora that lit the maintenance tunnels. Serenian escape route, Leolith explained, reducing speed, mapped but not in any official records. The pursuing craft attempted to follow, but their larger frames couldn't manage the transformation. One clipped the entrance, spiraling into the canyon wall in a satisfying explosion. The others pulled up, seeking alternative routes. That buys us time, Leolith said, guiding them deeper into the cavern network. But they'll find another way in. Jake deactivated his tactical systems completely, removing the power source. No more electronic breadcrumbs. Lylan chirped from her harness, seemingly enjoying the excitement. Her small hands reached toward Jake, blue eyes bright with what appeared to be admiration. She likes you, Leolith observed, her voice carrying an unusual quality. The feeling's mutual. Jake gently touched Lylan's outstretched hand with his finger, earning a delighted trill. She reminds me why this matters, why peace needs a chance. Leolith's expression softened momentarily. For all your violent capability, you have a curious gentleness, Jake Peters. The use of his name, rather than human, marked a subtle but significant shift. The Vakan ridges rose like jagged teeth against Althea's horizon, ancient stone formations carved by millennia of brutal storms. Leolith guided their vessel into a concealed opening, powering down all non-essential systems once they were secure inside the natural hangar. We should be safe here temporarily, she said, unstrapping from the pilot's seat. The mineral content in these rocks disrupts standard scanning technology. Jake nodded, relieving his stiff muscles as he stood. Good place for a conversation that neither of our governments wants to hear. They established a makeshift camp in a small chamber adjacent to the vessel. Leolith created a secure perimeter while Jake set up communications equipment modified to access both human and Serenian frequencies without broadcasting their location. Lylan explored their new surroundings with boundless curiosity, occasionally bringing interesting rocks or bioluminescent fungi to show Jake. Each time, he responded with exaggerated wonder that elicited delighted chirps from the child. She trusts easily, Jake observed as Leolith returned from securing the outer passages. Too easily, Leolith agreed, her gaze softening as she watched her daughter. Like her father. Tell me about him, Jake said quietly, adjusting the communication array. Leolith was silent for so long that Jake thought she might ignore the question. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight of memory. David Matthews, Diplomatic Corps. He came to Althea 2 years before the conflict began. Her fingers absently traced a pattern on her armor. He was different from other humans I had encountered. Curious, respectful. He spent months learning our customs, our language. Jake listened, struck by the vulnerability beneath her controlled exterior. When the tensions began, he advocated tirelessly for continued dialogue, Leolith continued. We became close during that time. Then Earth recalled all diplomatic personnel. He left without knowing about Lylan. And you never told him? Communications were severed days after their departure. Then the war began. Leolith's expression hardened. By the time Lylan was born, our peoples were killing each other across 3 systems. Jake's communication array suddenly activated, intercepting multiple encrypted channels. We're in, accessing both command networks simultaneously. They listened as reports flowed in from both human and Serenian forces. Battlefield updates, supply requests, casualty counts. Jake isolated specific transmissions, tracing them back to their sources. There, he said, highlighting a data stream. These orders supposedly coming from human high command show signs of external packet injection. And here, he switched to a Serenian military channel, the same digital fingerprint. Someone's inserting false intelligence into both sides' communications. Lilith leaned closer, studying the evidence. Can you trace it? Working on it. Jake's fingers flew across the interface. Got a partial location, orbital platform, geosynchronous above the Meridian Sea. A Vrakari trading post, Lilith confirmed, supposedly neutral territory. Jake compiled the evidence into an encrypted data package. We need to get this to people who can act on it. My commanding officer, Colonel Harmon, he suspected something like this from the beginning. And Serenian High Command, Lilith added. Elder Thalra specifically, she has questioned the war's escalation patterns. Jake initiated transmission protocols, then hesitated. Once we send this, there's no going back. Both of us will be exposed. Lilith met his gaze. Do you trust your Colonel Harmon? With this, yes. With you and Lylan? Jake frowned. I can't guarantee your safety if we return to human territory. Nor can I guarantee yours among my people. Lilith's ears twitched. A stalemate, then. Jake completed the transmission sequence. Let's hope they're more reasonable than we expect. Within an hour, they had responses from both commanders requesting secure video communication. Jake and Lilith positioned themselves so only they were visible to the cameras. Colonel Harmon appeared first, his weathered face tight with concern. Peters, we thought you were dead. Your transponder went offline 3 days ago. Situation's complicated, sir, Jake responded. Did you review the data package? I did. If authentic, it confirms our worst suspicions. Harmon's eyes narrowed. Your current company raises questions. Before Jake could respond, the Serenian channel activated. Elder Thalra's silver-furred face filled the screen, her age evident in the white markings around her eyes and muzzle. Commander Lilith, she said, her translator rendering her words in crisp, formal tones. Protocol Shadowfall was not intended for collaboration with enemy combatants. With respect, Elder, the evidence suggests the enemy is not who we believed. Lilith maintained perfect military posture. The Vrakari have manipulated both sides from the beginning. The two leaders digested this information in silence. Your evidence is compelling, Colonel Harmon admitted, but insufficient for a full stand-down. We need more. The Vrakari must be confronted directly, Elder Thalra stated. Their deception proven beyond doubt. Jake leaned forward. Sir, we can provide that proof, but we need guarantees of safety, for all 3 of us. 3, Harmon questioned. Jake exchanged a glance with Lilith, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. He shifted the camera angle, bringing Lylan into view where she played near Lilith's feet. Both leaders' reactions were immediate. Shock registered on Harmon's face, while Elder Thalra's ears flattened completely. A hybrid child, Elder Thalra whispered. Impossible. Very much possible, Lilith corrected, and likely the reason for the Vrakari's particular interest in this region. Jake quickly explained their theory about the ancient technology and genetic keys. As he spoke, he noted the leader's expressions shifting from disbelief to grave concern. Return to your respective commands immediately, Colonel Harmon ordered. We'll establish a secure corridor for... That won't be possible, Jake interrupted. The Vrakari are hunting us specifically. They've already attacked a Serenian outpost to get to Lylan. Then what do you propose, Sergeant? Harmon demanded. Jake straightened. We go to the source, the orbital platform, confront the Vrakari with representatives from both sides present. Absolutely not, both leaders responded simultaneously. The alternative is continuing a war based on lies, Lilith stated firmly, while my daughter remains a target. The communication suddenly degraded, static interrupting the signal. We're being jammed, Jake realized, attempting to restore the connection. Someone's found us. The cave rumbled as an explosion echoed from the entrance tunnel. Time's up, Lilith said, already moving to gather Lylan. They're here. Take the rear tunnel, Lilith commanded, thrusting Lylan into Jake's arms. It leads to an ancient temple complex. The Vakari won't expect us to go deeper, rather than attempt escape. Jake secured Lylan against his chest. What about you? I'll collapse the entrance tunnel, buy us time. Lilith was already preparing demolition charges from their vessel's emergency kit. Go now! Jake hesitated only a moment before racing down the indicated passage, Lylan clinging to him with surprising strength. Behind them, Lilith's voice echoed in sharp Serenian battle calls. The tunnel descended steeply, carved steps worn smooth by centuries of use. Jake's tactical training kept him moving despite the darkness, one hand against the wall for guidance, the other securing Lylan. The passage eventually opened into a vast underground chamber that stole Jake's breath. Enormous crystalline columns rose from floor to ceiling, each emitting a soft blue glow that intensified at his approach. Ancient glyphs covered the walls, similar to the symbols he'd seen in his unit's intelligence files about Althea's buried technology. It's real, he whispered. A series of explosions rumbled from above, dust and small stones cascading from the ceiling. Jake pressed deeper into the chamber, seeking cover among the columns. Lylan suddenly squirmed in his arms, chirping urgently and pointing toward a side passage nearly hidden behind one of the massive crystals. Jake followed her guidance, ducking into the narrow opening just as the sound of pursuit echoed from the main tunnel. The side passage twisted through the rock before emptying into a smaller chamber dominated by a circular platform. 7 crystalline pillars surrounded the circle, each pulsing with different colored light. Jake crouched behind the entrance, listening to the distant sounds of combat. Lilith was holding them off, but for how long? Lylan wriggled free from his grasp, toddling with surprising steadiness toward the circular platform. Before Jake could stop her, she placed her tiny hand on its surface. The chamber hummed to life, the 7 pillars brightening dramatically. Symbols illuminated across the walls and ceiling, flowing like liquid light. A 3-dimensional projection materialized above the platform, a map of Althea with pulsing nodes indicating locations across the planet. A control center, Jake realized. The ancient technology, it's a planetary network. The sound of energy weapons discharged nearby. Jake drew his borrowed Serenian sidearm, positioning himself between the entrance and Lylan. Lilith burst through the doorway moments later, armor scorched and bloodied. She sealed the entrance behind her with a final demolition charge, buying precious minutes. They're right behind me, she reported, breathing heavily. Vakari assault team, at least 6 operatives. Jake pointed to the activated platform. Lylan triggered something, some kind of control system. Lilith's eyes widened as she took in the illuminated chamber. The ancestor's heart, I thought it was a myth. She joined Lylan at the platform, running her fingers over the symbols. Our oldest legends speak of sanctuaries built by those who came before. Can it help us? Jake asked, checking his weapon charge. Perhaps. Lilith studied the flowing symbols intently. These patterns, they respond to Lylan because she carries both genetic signatures. The legends say only those of dual heritage could access the deepest sanctuaries. The sealed entrance shuddered under impact from the other side. Their time was running out. There, Lilith indicated a sequence of symbols. A security protocol. It requires blood bonding. Jake approached cautiously. What kind of blood bonding? The sacred life debt ritual. Lilith's voice carried sudden reverence. When one life is bound to another through sacrifice and choice, I considered offering it to you after you saved Lylan, but there wasn't time. Now it may be our only chance. Lilith met his gaze, her electric blue eyes intense. The ritual would link us biologically, create a temporary genetic bridge that might fool the system into granting us full access. Another explosion rocked the entrance. Fractures appeared in the sealed stone. What does this ritual involve exactly? Jake asked, keeping his weapon trained on the door. An exchange of blood, an exchange of essence. Lilith's ears flattened slightly, a gesture Jake now recognized as embarrassment rather than aggression. It is intimate. Among my people, it creates a bond that transcends physical connection. It means offering everything you are to another. Understanding dawned in Jake's eyes, a life mating. In human terms, yes. Lilith glanced at the failing door. It would normally be performed with ceremonial preparations, sacred oils, proper witnesses, but circumstances are what they are, Jake finished. He holstered his weapon and stepped forward. I'm in! Lilith seemed taken aback by his ready agreement. You understand what you're agreeing to? I understand enough. Jake smiled slightly. I've been carrying your daughter across a war zone. I took fire meant for you. If that doesn't qualify me for a life debt ritual, what would? For the first time, Leolith's composure broke completely. Her stern features softened, vulnerability showing through the commander's mask. There is no undoing this, Jake Peters, she warned, using his full name with deliberate weight. I don't want to undo it, he replied simply. The chamber trembled as another assault hit the sealed entrance. Lylin watched them from the platform, her young face somehow knowing beyond her years. Lilith moved with sudden decision. She shed her outer armor with quick, efficient movements, revealing the lithe, muscled form beneath. The intricate patterns in her blue fur became visible, natural markings that followed the contours of her body. Remove your upper garments, she instructed, retrieving a ceremonial dagger from her boot. The heart must be accessible. Jake complied, discarding his damaged shirt. The wounds from his earlier injuries stood out against his skin, testament to his journey since finding Lylin. Lilith approached, dagger gleaming in the ethereal light. Her free hand came to rest against his chest, directly over his heart. The touch sent unexpected warmth through his body. I, Lilith of the Northern Canyons, offer the sacred bond of life to you, Jake Peters of Earth, she intoned formally. My blood to your blood, my essence to your essence, my life to your life. She drew the dagger across her palm, then looked expectantly at Jake. He took the blade, maintaining eye contact as he mirrored her action across his own palm. I, Jake Peters of Earth, accept this bond with Lilith of the Northern Canyons. My blood to your blood, my essence to your essence, my life to your life. Their bleeding palms pressed together, fingers interlacing. The sensation that flooded through Jake transcended physical pleasure. Awareness expanded, consciousness merging. He gasped as emotions not his own flowed through him. Lilith's fierce protectiveness, her carefully hidden loneliness, her growing affection for him. The chamber responded to their bonding, the 7 pillars pulsing in accelerating rhythm. The planetary map expanded, revealing deeper layers of the network. Jake glanced over at Lylin, who had curled into a small ball near one of the glowing pillars, her tiny body finally succumbing to exhaustion. She had drifted to sleep, perhaps soothed by the gentle humming of the ancient technology. She's asleep, Jake whispered. First time I've seen her rest since this all began. Lilith gazed at her daughter with tender affection before turning back to Jake. Her body pressed closer against his, warmth radiating between them. The bond must be completed, she whispered, her voice carrying new intimacy. Fully. The entrance wouldn't hold much longer. Death waited on the other side. But in this moment, surrounded by ancient light in this temporary sanctuary, nothing else seemed to matter. Jake's hand traced the markings along Leolith's spine, drawing her closer. Show me. Dawn light filtered through crystalline formations above, casting rainbow patterns across Jake's skin. He stirred slowly, awareness returning in layers. Lilith's warmth pressed against him, her breathing steady in sleep. The events of the night before played through his mind, the ritual, the completion of their bond, the explosive culmination of physical and psychic connection that had sent wave after wave of energy through the ancient chamber. Jake gently traced the markings along Lilith's shoulder, marveling at how they seemed to shimmer beneath his touch. The bond between them pulsed like a living thing, allowing him glimpses of her dreams. No longer commander and soldier, they had become something new together. Lylin still slept peacefully near the pillar, undisturbed by the night's events. Jake frowned, suddenly remembering the Vrakari assault team that had pursued them. The sealed entrance remained intact, no sign of the expected breach. The security protocols activated, Leolith murmured, her eyes opening to meet his. Our bonding satisfied the genetic requirements. The sanctuary recognized us as authorized guardians. Jake helped her sit up, both of them reaching for discarded clothing. So the Vakari? We're denied entry, at least temporarily. Lilith's ears twitched, listening for threats. The bond worked, Jake. I can feel your presence in my mind like an echo. I feel it too, he admitted, adjusting his damaged armor. Is it always this intense? A rare smile curved Lilith's lips. The legends speak of life bonds creating shared consciousness, but I believe them exaggerated. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining. I was mistaken. The planetary map still hovered above the central platform, now revealing new information. Jake approached it carefully, noting detailed schematics of the underground network spanning Althea. This isn't just a security system, he realized. It's a planetary defense grid, weapon emplacements, shield generators, communication arrays, all dormant for millennia. Lilith joined him, Lila now awake and cradled in her arms. The ancestors' technology, this is what the Vakari truly wanted. And they needed Lylan's unique genetics to access it, Jake concluded. A human-Serenian hybrid, the perfect key. The central platform suddenly pulsed, a communication interface materializing above it. Colonel Harmon's voice emerged from the ancient speakers. Peters, do you copy? Our sensors detected massive energy signatures from your location. Jake exchanged glances with Lilith before responding. We're here, Colonel. Situation has evolved. That's an understatement, Harmon replied dryly. We've picked up Vakari troop movements converging on your position. Whatever you've found, they want it badly. Sir, we've discovered an ancient defense system. The Vakari manipulated our war to gain access to it. A brief silence followed. We've been reviewing your evidence, Peters. Combined with intercepted Vakari communications, it's compelling enough that I've initiated direct contact with Serenian High Command. Elder Thalra's voice joined the conversation. The sacred temple complex was believed lost centuries ago. Its rediscovery changes everything. We need extraction, Jake said. The Vakari won't stop coming. Already underway, Harmon confirmed. Joint human-Serenian operation, first of its kind. ETA 30 minutes. Lilith stepped forward. Elder Thalra, the human sergeant and I have completed the sacred life debt bond. It was necessary to access the temple's systems. Another waited silence. Then he is family now, Elder Thalra finally responded, her translator unable to fully convey the gravity in her tone. The Council will recognize this bond. As will Earth governments, Harmon added, though with noticeable hesitation. Diplomatic protocols for interspecies unions were drafted years ago, though never implemented. Jake felt Lilith's surprise through their bond, mirroring his own. Official recognition had seemed impossible mere hours ago. The conversation was interrupted by a distant explosion that shook the chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. Vakari orbital bombardment, Lilith identified. They're trying to blast their way in. They must be desperate, Jake said. They know we've discovered their manipulation. The control interface suddenly expanded, displaying tactical data. Multiple Vakari vessels had taken aggressive positions in orbit. Colonel Elder, Jake reported urgently, the Vakari are mobilizing their entire fleet. This goes beyond a covert operation now. Confirmed, Harmon responded grimly. We're tracking 27 warships in near orbit. They've dropped all pretense. Lylan chirped nervously, sensing the tension. Jake gently stroked her head, the gesture now familiar and natural. Lilith studied the ancient controls before them. This system was built as a defense network. It could still function. Against an entire fleet, Jake questioned. Only one way to find out. Lilith placed her hand on the platform. Jake covered it with his own, their bonded blood creating a perfect genetic signature. The chamber hummed with awakening power. Across Althea, long-dormant structures began to activate. Defense towers rising from mountains, shield generators emerging from lakes, communication arrays unfolding from desert sands. Remarkable, Elder Thalra whispered over the comm. The ancestors' final gift. The orbital display showed Vakari ships scattering as planetary defense systems targeted them. Several vessels attempted to jump to hyperspace, only to be caught in gravitational tethers that dragged them back. Their entire operation is exposed, Harmon noted with satisfaction. The evidence will reach every world in the sector within hours. A massive energy signature appeared at the temple entrance. The sealed door dissolved into particles, revealing a joint human-Serenian extraction team, something unimaginable days earlier. As they prepared to leave, Jake took one last look at the ancient chamber. What happens to this place now? It belongs to both our peoples, Lilith said firmly, Lylan secure in her arms, as does its guardianship. Through their bond, Jake felt her determination and her hope. A shared vision formed between them, a future where humans and Serenians worked together, where Lylan could grow up without hiding her heritage, where other hybrid children might follow. 3 days later, Jake stood beside Leolith on the observation deck of the neutral station orbiting Althea. Below them, joint peacekeeping forces secured former battle zones, while diplomats from both species drafted preliminary peace accords. The Vrakari leadership faced justice before an interspecies tribunal, their centuries of manipulation exposed. Dozens of similar conflicts across multiple systems were revealed as their handiwork, centuries of bloodshed engineered for profit. What happens now? Jake asked, his arm comfortably around Lilith's waist. Lylan played nearby with building blocks, occasionally glancing up to ensure her parents remained in sight. We rebuild, Lilith answered simply. First Althea, then the relationship between our peoples. And us? Jake asked, though their bond already carried the answer. Leolith turned to face him fully, her once stern features softened by the events of the past week. The life-debt bond is permanent, Jake Peters. My life to yours, through all that comes. I can live with that. Jake smiled, drawing her closer. Through their connection, he felt her contentment, her fierce love for Lylan, and the growing depth of her feelings for him. Colonel Harmon approached, datapad in hand. Peters, your new assignment has been approved. Liaison to the Serenian High Command, specializing in joint security operations. Thank you, sir. Harmon glanced between them, a knowing look in his weathered eyes. First official human Serenian family in recorded history. The diplomats are having a field day. After he departed, Jake and Lilith moved to the viewport, watching as the twin suns of Althea emerged from behind the planet's curve. When I first found Lylan in that cave, I never imagined this outcome, Jake admitted. Lilith's hand found his, their bond humming with shared emotion. Perhaps the ancestors did. Perhaps that is why they built their technology to require both our genetic signatures. You believe it was destiny? I believe in choices, Lilith corrected, her eyes reflecting the rising suns. You chose to protect a child not of your species. I chose to trust an enemy. Together we chose a different path. Lylan toddled over to them, arms raised in a universal request. Jake lifted her effortlessly, settling her between them where she belonged. Beyond the viewport, Althea turned, no longer a battleground but a promise, a world where a wounded human soldier and a Serenian commander had found something unexpected amid the chaos of war. A family, a bond, and a future neither could have imagined alone.